maybe first off, let's start with day one. I know last year I asked you questions that you're way, way too far ahead. So let's just start with one day at a time and day one.
I think it's been, maybe day two because we had some testing and stuff yesterday, so you got to know some of the kids that way. Day one is a little better because you get on the ice, and some of the kids, you know the faces, you don't know the names of the free agent kids, so all of a sudden you get on the ice and you start to recognize everybody. So that gets a little easier as the week goes on, so it gets easier for us and for them too, so it'll be good.
Yeah, so how exciting is it, from the, player development capacity, guys that you've spent winter or winters, watching develop, and you finally get the chance to be on the ice with them, to work with them one-on-one?
Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting because I think Mike and myself, we travel around throughout the year, and you build relationships with these kids and you get to know them, and we don't get on the ice with them much. You go out for supper with them and you talk to them a little bit here and there and stuff, but to get on the ice, it's a different atmosphere where you're in their own element and they're a lot more comfortable, and you can talk a little more on skilled stuff or things on the ice or a few things like that, and it becomes more fun.
Jimmy, we heard from Mark Hiller and Kevin Cheveldayoff after the draft the other day, and about the, maybe not quantity, but certainly quality of the new guys. You're getting to know these four new players. Just your early impressions of all four of them?
All four of them, really nice kids. I don't know them as players. One thing in player development, you go around and you watch your players, and then you get to know the kids when you draft them. Right. So it's early, but meeting them at the draft and getting to speak with them and seeing them, in person here now, this is where the relationship kind of starts. Yeah. So it's been good so far. Really enjoyed it.
There's some neat stories there. A guy like Kevin He, just kind of making history given his background. You got Alphonse, who was here as a little kid, watching development camp. Now he's participating in it. So some good stories to build on.
I seen the right away when we drafted him. I went up into the family room. I was kind of going back and forth and kind of running around, and he showed me a picture of him in Winnipeg. And I'm like, oh wow, and it's probably it doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but it made me feel really old because you see the kid there, and then he's up there, and you're like, oh man, this is so. But those are great stories, and Kevin He too, such a nice family, nice kid, very thankful, very appreciative, very humble. It's really cool to see.
We're seeing some other NHL teams maybe almost steer away from a ton of on ice in their development camp and focus more on the off ice. You guys still have that mix here, but maybe how important is the off-ice stuff, just and maybe go over some of the things that the lessons you'll try to lead these guys with?
I think there's hockey lessons too. We got away from the on-ice testing this year just because some kids haven't skated in the summertime and some kids have, and so it maybe gives a little bit of false sense of security if they do well or kids don't do well. So it's like some of the stuff on ice we're trying to get away from a little bit, but then the off-ice stuff that you want to do, Adam Lowry came in and spoke to the players yesterday, and it was awesome. I think what he said and his path that he took will resonate with these guys incredibly. It was really cool to see. So some of those things are really important for these kids. And then, nutrition seminar that we had. Today we're doing a little team building. We'll play some pickleball, some stuff like that. So it's all great stuff.
Curious what about social media? Has that changed the way you talk to young players about that? Because it's such a prominent part of people's lives these days. And 10 years ago, that would have been something you barely even touched upon.
Yeah, right? I think so. We've tried to touch on it. Probably for the last 10 years, we've tried to have just social media awareness and media awareness, everything to try and help players understand the whole world that's out there, right? So,
Jimmy, what do you tell them about the media?
No, you know what? I think I've had pretty good relationships with everyone. I try and be honest and try and hopefully lead by example.
What did Adam say? What is it like? What did he talk about?
What he talked about his path from where he grew up with his dad and being in a hockey family. He talked about where he had lived, the places where he played junior hockey in Swift Current. He talked about the things that he does to prepare himself for games and his path. The first time he got sent down, how disappointed he was, and how he had to go back down to St. John's at the time, or the Moose at that time, and work on his game and figure that out to get back up there. And those are all great growing experiences that kids are gonna it's going to happen, right? So to hear that from him, I think it has a huge impact, more than I could ever tell a kid or a coach could ever tell a kid.
Jimmy, what about Chevy the other day, Monday after free agency? He said, if I was a young player in this organization right now, I'd be really excited about opportunities ahead this summer. Nobody's making the Winnipeg Jets this week, obviously, but do you get a sense that there's maybe some added excitement just at opportunities that could present themselves in the near future?
I think so. I'm not involved on that side of it, so
Yeah.
I didn't know that until I read it, right? Like, so I don't know that kind of stuff. But Mike and I, we just try and prepare players for those opportunities. And, I think really, honestly, that's what you're doing, preparing kids for opportunities. There's players that we've seen that have come through this, like, Josh Morrissey, how prepared he was for his opportunity when he came along, right? All the work that he had put into in the American League and everything, and he came here and had an impact right away. So sometimes those opportunities don't come for a while. You don't know when they're coming, but you've got to be prepared for them. That's what we try and tell kids.
With that adversity piece, how would you describe the season Dom DiVincentiis had?
Probably adversity for him. There were some good parts, bad parts, things that he grew on. But the thing about Dom is he's a really smart kid. He's very in tune with his development and where he wants to go and what has to happen. He's a good kid. Yeah.
Jimmy, can you just add any insight to the Rutger McGroarty situation?
You know what? I had a great relationship with Rutger. I think I still do. But I don't know. That's probably more comments for Chevy. On the player development side, we had some great conversations and watched him play quite a bit this year. And that's all I. That's no, not for me, not at all. Yeah.
I think the timeline aligns that you would have been with the organization when Adam was, going through all of that. What do you remember about his attitude at that time, or even those reports that you would get back as you were seeing him learn those lessons?
The thing about Adam, coming from a hockey family, he was very driven. So he knew what he wanted and knew how he was going to do things there. He talked about his injury that he had at the end of the year in Swift Current, and then going up to the Moose at the end of the year. He knew the path more than some kids, I think, because he was coming from a hockey family. So it probably, and you know what? 90% of guys like him, they do it themselves, right? Mike and I are there just for support system, answer questions, and help them with stuff like that. But he's a smart guy.
Just on that, out of curiosity, it's a chance to make yourself look really smart. When you saw young Adam Lowry, did you think to yourself, like, there's a future
I knew everything.
NHL captain?
For sure I did. Yeah. I made that comment 10 years ago. Yeah. No, not at all. You see the kids grow, and you see them build relationships with players on the team. And even Adam talked about development camps he'd been to and relationships he had with kids at development camp that he's still friends with. And how the relationships have built today into the locker room that guys he's been friends with. So it's important, I think, these relationships. You always hear us talk about it and stuff in development camp, and maybe it gets redundant or repetitive or whatever, but it's important because these relationships is what builds now to what we have, right?
Last year at this time, kind of on that note, and it's sort of about Rutger, but not about Rutger. Like, such a charismatic guy, right? And a lot of people were drawn to him, and we were talking, okay, maybe future captain, all that sort of stuff. Now that he's not in the room, you probably are getting to see other voices step up, or like, who are you looking to as leaders in a week like this?
Yeah, like we getting to know them right now, that's what you're looking at. Like a kid like Kevin who we just drafted, who after practice came right over to Mike and I and shook our hands and said, "Hey, thank you very much. And you're like, that's kind of, Keener and I kind of looked at that's cool, like the humbleness and and we didn't do anything other than being on the ice, passing pucks around and stuff. So stuff like that. But not only that, the players that we've seen, we've gone out and traveled this year, like Jacob Julian and Colby Barlow, and like Jacob Julian's season, and get to spend time with him and to see those characters and see how invested they are and how much they want to get better. And it's pretty neat to see.
Jimmy, I wanted to ask you about guidance and advice you might have for those guys like Alphonse and Colby and even Brad, who's been in the system for a while, of managing expectations of being a first-round pick.
It's interesting because you see them And you see it out there today with the young kids that we just drafted at 18. You see their physical development, their mental development there. And so it's different with every player, right? But to have patience and understand the process and what they need to work on right now, not where you want to be in 2 years, 3 years, or whatever. Take the things that you need will help you right now. If it's time in the gym, if it's understanding what you're putting in your body, if it's working on your cardio, if it's skill work with pucks, if it's, you know, skating, all those kinds of things that you have to put in right now that's going to help you down the road. That's kind of the path or the influence we try and have on players.
Is that a challenge with it being a teenager and, you know, for them 3 years from now, like?
You know what? Not really, because I think a lot of these kids are really driven. Like, they have skating coaches, they have strength coaches in the off season, they have skill coaches, they have people that are helping them work on things, you know. And for rehab, guys that are injured or guys that they have such stuff at their fingertips right now, and they're invested in it.
Just a quick housekeeping one. Elias wasn't skating today, right?
No, he wasn't on the ice today. No,
Do you
he's
expect-
he'll be here the rest of the week. He just had to go see a doctor or something.
Oh,
So
okay, but
nothing major.
but
He's
he'll be
just-
on the ice
he'll be on the
the
ice the rest of the week.
And
Yeah.
then Garrett Brown is a guy who
Yeah.
obviously had his season, but he's a
Yeah.
guy I know the organization's very high on.
Yeah.
How close to skating is he? And
I think he's just starting skating with
Okay.
this school. We don't want to, like, this camp it's not about, you know, if a kid's coming off of an injury or, like, I don't want you to get injured going back to school. That's the last thing you want is to see a kid get injured, right?
so the hope
So,
that he's ready for
and
a full
yeah,
season.
yeah, oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, yeah, he will be. That's one of the things. Like at DU, they have him on a plan, a progression plan of where he's going, and I don't want to screw that up. Like that's them, yeah.
From a perspective of like getting guys into the play with the Moose at the end of there in the season, Colby Barlow came and played in. How much impact do you think that has on those guys, especially to head into the summer? And
You know what? And that's a great question. And I can lead into Adam Lowry's comments too that he made, because at the end of the year he went to St. John's and he talked about that yesterday. And it was a long season, he said, and he came there and he realized how fast and good and stuff the league was, and it helped him know what he had to get to that level. So, and that's what you're looking for in players, right? For them to realize, okay, this is the level I got to get to be an impact player at this level, like I was in junior. Like he talked about in junior, he had, you know, he's one of the best players on his team at that level. He had 40 goals, I think, and 47 assists, you know. And then he comes in and he said, my first year I had like 2 goals and 9 assists, right, in the American League. So he talked about figuring out what his role was and understanding all that stuff in development. So another reason why it was great for the kids from that question.
This is sort of one of those like inspired by Rutgers situation, but not about Rutgers sort of questions. What is the biggest tool in your toolkit as a development staff that's going to help with retention for these guys forming relationships down the road?
What is the biggest tool in our?
Sounds like an interview question.
Yeah, I gotta think about it for a sec. But I don't know if there's one big tool that I can say, oh yeah, we do this and it works. I think there's a combination of stuff that we try and do with players. I'm a big believer in self-evaluation with players and having players talk about their game and you know, we try and communicate with players after every game that they play and say, we ask them 3 questions: what'd you do well, what'd you do poorly, what can you do tomorrow to get better, right? So they have an idea in their mind on how they can progress and how they can get better every single day, and have a plan. So those are one of the things that we do. You know, we try and spend as much time as we can with all kids. You get to see them, talk to their coaches, talk about their development, get out to eat with them, watch them practice. I think Mike and I like watching practices more than games because you can learn a lot about a player watching practices and stuff like that. So some of the things we do. I don't know.
Just one last one from me, Jimmy. What's the importance? You got, I think, 17 guys here that are obviously drafted by the organization. But then there's like 18 guys that are here on invites. So what do you tell those guys about what this week means? Because it may not mean something immediately, but this is a chance, obviously, to add to their resume and maybe open some eyes, right?
And what we tell kids, or what we try and tell them, is that professional hockey, pro hockey is a different animal than junior college, European pro. Playing pro hockey in North America, the travel schedule, how well you look after your body. Like, I remember going home, I took Elias Salomonsson to the airport last year after training camp, because he was going back to his team in Cheveldayoff. And we were driving to the airport, and I said, hey, what did you learn? Like, what was the biggest difference from, you know, coming to training camp? And he's like, I couldn't believe how well guys look after their body. Like to see all those guys going up into the gym right after practice, spending time on rehab or small muscle groups, recovery, all different kinds of things that just kids don't know. Like you don't know what you don't know until you see it, right? So they see that, which is a great experience for them, and then they do it themselves. So that was one of the things.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, you guys. Thank you.